The mind finds safety in paralysis and purgatory. Because being paralyzed means an abdication of responsibility for one's own pain. The purgatory is more familiar and comfortable in comparison to the hell, which must be confronted and felt by diving into the depths of our pains. And the pains have already happened. They exist as imprints of the past. Whether this is a past within your life, within my life, of a certain traumatic event that happened that induced the constricted state of paralysis, of fight or flight, in face of whatever demon tried to rear its head. To then weave itself into your body, this paralysis, this fight or flight, this fear. And cultivate a tension, a blockage, a pain. Now, I mentioned this can be a lifetime thing in this lifetime, but it is also deeply ancestral. We have all inherited the fall. We have all inherited missteps, severance from the divine, disconnection from the Great Mother and the Great Father. And that is the deepest pain that there is. The point is, these pains exist within the body. And if the mind finds comfort and safety in paralysis and purgatory, it's because these are familiar. Whereas not only are our pains unfamiliar, unknown, dark, terrifying, scary, underworldly, but the familiarities that we do have about them, in conscious and unconscious memories, are the very deepest fears and scary places that our minds do not want to go. In this lifetime, I have faced some literal demons. The darkest, most evil emanations of being that you could possibly imagine. I've gone into battle with them. And at the time I was ignorant. And I was a fool and I was a drunken idiot. So I lost. And I still carry the imprints of that pain so deep within my body. And I've been speaking of the mind, but really I've been speaking of my mind. And my mind's ability to tell stories, to spiral up here in the brain, within the comfort of its own delusions. Simply to think itself avoiding the possibility of having to face those feelings again, of having to face those demons again, of having to go to battle again for my soul. The fear of having confronted these things has manifested in a form of fear of imprisonment. And I'm not just talking of going to jail, I'm talking about eternal imprisonment, where my soul and body and mind and every part of my being would just be completely stuck, cannot move, absolute rigidity, tense, constricted. Within the mirror of the world, resembling authoritarian structures and bureaucracy. All these people walking around to their 9-to-5 jobs to perpetuate a system of lies and illusions and imprisonment and slavery and falsity and vice and avoidance. Police, government, technocrats, all kinds of people and structures coming from those people that are completely detached from their own hearts and from their own abilities to feel. Now, I carry a lot of anger toward these people and toward these structures. People like them, structures like them. And what I've realized today is my body is pretty angry at my own mind. Because my mind, in its obsession with paralysis and purgatory, in its finding comfort in the delusions that weave these elements of my being into my body, they then create and become the very prison which I fear. The very rigidity and unfeelingness and stuckness and a cage around my heart. Here I'm feeling my body just like these constrictions and these tensions that want to feel fluid, that want the depth of the emotional waters of my scorpionic being to flow freely, to express the full emanations of my freedom and my breath, to dissolve the paralysis, where my mind feels like it has to limit my speech. because maybe it's not appropriate to talk about these things. Maybe if I get too emotional, maybe if I get too erratic, maybe if I get angry, maybe if I show my darkness and my pain, that's not acceptable. That I myself won't be worthy of being seen, that I myself will not be accepted by whoever is seeing this. The invisible eyes of the world. If you walk around the world where people live in their little cookie cutter boxes of homes, which are sacred spaces for a lot of people and necessary. But if you go into that world, into the city, and you start having an outrage and an outburst of emotion and a feeling, people are going to be like, whoa, like, no, get that away. Like, put on my smile. I am happy. Everything is perfect. Let me go into my little box. Let me go work my little 9 to 5. Let me void my pain and numb my pain by watching TV and this and that. I didn't fully express that exactly how I meant it, but you get what I mean. It is not normal. It is not accepted to express the fullness of your emotional depth. At least not in the society built on deceit and falsity. Because the same imbalance of which I'm speaking, where the mind is stuck in paralysis and purgatory and avoidance of its own pain, this is just a macrocosmic representation. I guess this. The city, the cookie cutter, logocentric structuralization of our world. It's all built in a lot of ways to avoid our own selves, to avoid our own pains, to avoid the fear of the primordial womb and the chaos that exists in the unknown of the ocean, the emotional waters, which are fluid, unpredictable, deep, dark. And probably fucking terrifying. And yet, absolutely fundamentally necessary for life. So, the medicine exists and dwells in feeling, in allowing, and in diving into the waters, into the pains. To recognize that the paralysis and the purgatory is a self-fulfilling and self-imprisoning prophecy of pain's avoidance. I avoid my pain because I fear it'll somehow imprison me, that it'll somehow be forever, that my fears will be universalized and perpetual, and that my soul might be taken from me if I go back to those places which are stored within my body. My mind has woven a story that if I go back, I might go to prison. I might get fucked. I might die. All of the fucking worst possible case scenarios, which aren't actually real. And because the mind stays stuck in these loops and these stories rooted in delusion and deceit and avoidance, the mind creates within the body and within the macrocosmic ripples of our reality-generating wills the very prison which it wishes to avoid. I don't know why I do this, because I am not a fucking prison. I am a free-flowing being of water. My body is made of water. My luminary alignments are watery and fiery. And that is allowed, and it is free, and it is beautiful, and it is expressive, and it is meant to be expressed. And my medicine weaves itself into, through, and out of that water and of that flame, and in the intermingling of the water and the flame, and all other elemental emanations of being which I am currently in this form. So why would my mind, or any systems that come from minds severed from their hearts, why would we want to repress and imprison that beauty, that uniqueness, that soulful emanation, that liberty that exists within the fluidity and unpredictability of the womb, of the sun, of the breath, of the earth beneath our feet, of the flowers that bloom, and of the divine presence of God in every single intermingling of these things, and in every single unique instantiation of these elements. Much as the anger within my body towards my own mind, Mother Earth is angry as well. Mother Ocean is angry as well. And the flames and the breaths of Christ are angry as well. And these forms of anger are righteous. They're not just these little wounded children. I'm talking about the universal Father and the universal Mother in perfect matrimony and balance, microcosmically embodied in this recalibration here being spoken and felt. But the imbalances have gone too far. And the deceit that is necessary to remain paralyzed and avoid one's own responsibility of the confrontation of one's own pains and of the alchemization of those pains into reunion with all that is divine. All of that avoidance in some sense, whether metaphorical or quite literal, at some point in time or timelessness will need to face divine wrath and justice. Now, that does not mean that this wrath is this eternal flame of hell and eternal punishment and imprisonment. But rather a flood or a conflagration which together dissolve all falsity, all deceit, all evil, all illusion, all misalignment. All of these things are dissolved. In a wrath that is ultimately a divine act of love geared towards divine realignment. And here within this microcosm, given that I've spoken of a flood and a conflagration of fire, my micro-celestial embodiment here is scorpionic water and Sagittarian flame. So that this flood and this conflagration begins within. By allowing my mind to dive into the pain. And to dissolve it all with love. If you have watched this video and you have felt resonance with it in some sense in your life, maybe you are stuck in your mind. Maybe your mind tells stories that aren't actually rooted in truth, that keep you from feeling your pain, that keep you in a pattern of avoidance. If that's the case, remember that you are safe. And that it's your responsibility to go and feel your pain. And it's by feeling your pain that you release your pain. That you release all of the ways that your pain binds you. And thus you become free. God and the goddess are your allies. Are your allies. And your prayer is your way to invoke their protection as well as their guidance. I'm going to leave it at that. May all be guided to God, to healing, and to universal freedom.